Lucia had always been the quiet shadow of our dorm. While the rest of us filled the hallways with music, laughter, and the smell of late-night pizza, she seemed to float through the building like a ghost, present, but somehow outside of everything. Her dinners were solitary affairs in the corner of the cafeteria, where she'd eat slowly, eyes down, as if hoping no one would notice her. On weekends, while we crowded into cars headed to parties, her blinds would stay shut, the glow of a desk lamp marking her only movement. It wasn't that she was disliked. It was as if she simply existed on a different frequency from the rest of us. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of her in unexpected places, buying instant ramen at the campus store, walking across the quad with a scarf wrapped high around her neck, even in mild weather, or slipping quietly into the library just before closing. She never seemed hurried, but she never lingered either, as though she was always on her way to somewhere that wasn't here. There was something about her that drew my curiosity, but it felt like an unspoken rule not to intrude. One night, that invisible line between her and everyone else was crossed, but not in the way anyone would want. A TikTok began making the rounds in our dorm group chat. It was only 10 seconds long, but it hit with a cruel precision. Over grainy footage of Lucia walking alone down the hall, someone had written in bright white text, "The friendless girl in Hayes Hall." The caption below read, "Spot her in the wild." The audio was some trending sound, upbeat and mocking. People laughed. Some pretended it was harmless, just a joke, but I watched it twice and felt an uncomfortable twist in my stomach. It wasn't just the video, it was the comment section. Dozens of classmates chimed in with things like, "She gives haunted Victorian child energy," and "Is she even real?" The anonymity of the internet gave them permission to be cruel without consequence. I scrolled through the comments, half expecting someone to speak up in her defense, but no one did. I hated to admit it, but even I didn't type anything. I just sat there, staring at my phone, feeling like I'd just witnessed something I couldn't unsee. Later that night, I went to the laundry room to grab my clothes, and that's when I found her. She was on the floor in the corner, knees pulled up, her phone tossed aside. Her shoulders shook with each uneven breath, and the fluorescent lights above made her look almost translucent. The dryers hummed, the smell of fabric softener heavy in the air, but it felt like we were in some frozen pocket of time. For a moment, I thought about quietly walking away. I didn't know her well, hardly at all really, and maybe she didn't want anyone to see her like this. But there's a point where someone's pain becomes too loud to ignore, even without words. I sat down next to her, the cold tile pressing through my jeans. She didn't look at me right away. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were red and rimmed with tears. There was a wet streak down her cheek and a silent question in her gaze. Why? It wasn't just about the TikTok. It was about everything that had led to this moment. The loneliness, the silence, the way people could overlook someone until it was convenient to mock them. That was the night I decided something. If no one else was going to cross that invisible barrier, I would. I didn't think of it as some grand mission. It was just the right thing to do, maybe even the necessary thing to do. The next day, I knocked on her door. It took a while before she opened it, and when she did, she looked startled, like she'd been caught in the act of existing. I had a bag of popcorn in one hand and my laptop in the other. "Want to watch something?" I asked. She hesitated, glancing past me into the hallway, as if checking to see if this was some kind of prank. Eventually, she stepped aside, letting me in. Her room was neat, almost too neat, with everything aligned perfectly on her desk. I set the our laptop on her bed and told her I had a show we could watch, Pretty Little Liars. "It's dramatic," I said, "and ridiculous, but it's addictive." She didn't say much at first, just sat beside me, her hands folded in her lap. When the opening credits rolled, I snuck a glance at her. She was watching intently, her brow furrowed like she was trying to figure out the rules of some strange new world. About halfway through the first episode, I saw the corner of her mouth twitch upward. Not a full smile, but something close. It was small, so small, but it felt like the first crack in a wall that had been standing for a very long time. At first, the show lit her up in ways I didn't expect. Lucia had always moved through campus like she was trying to disappear, head down, hands in pockets, footsteps quiet. But after the first few episodes of Pretty Little Liars, something in her changed. She started watching with this intent focus, pausing to analyze every scene. She'd laugh at lines I didn't think were that funny, or lean forward when the music got tense like she was storing it all away. A week later, she came back from the dining hall with red lipstick, a shade that made her pale skin look like porcelain. "Inspired by Hannah," she said, a shy smile tugging at her lips. It wasn't just lipstick. She started wearing fitted jeans instead of oversized sweats. Her hair, usually knotted in a bun, began falling in soft waves over her shoulders, and then she did something none of us had ever seen. She invited people over. "PLL marathon in my room. Bring snacks," the note on our floor's bulletin board read, signed with a doodled heart. That night, 6 people showed up. Lucia had popcorn, sodas, even little candy bowls. She was nervous at first, but by the 3rd episode, she was laughing. With everyone else, quoting lines like she'd rehearsed them. I sat beside her, a little stunned. This was the same girl I'd seen crying in the stairwell just weeks ago. At one point, she turned to me, eyes bright, and said, "You're totally my Spencer." I grinned. In the show, Spencer was the smart, determined one, loyal but strategic. The fact that she saw me that way felt good. I thought maybe, just maybe, she was finally stepping out of the shadows. But then the messages started. It was a Friday night when it happened. We'd just finished season 2. The dorm hall smelled like microwave popcorn and cherry lip gloss. Lucia was walking back from the bathroom, her phone in hand. I heard the vibration first, that low, buzzing hum against her palm. She stopped mid-step. Her eyes scanned the screen once, then again, slower. The color drained from her face like someone had pulled the plug. "What is it?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her fingers were trembling, gripping the phone so hard I thought she might crack it. Finally, she turned the screen toward me, a text. No number, no contact name, just the words, "I see you, Lucia," and then, at the bottom, a single letter. I laughed, just a little, assuming it was one of our friends playing a joke. "Okay, that's kind of clever," I said. She didn't laugh. Her breathing went shallow. Her lips parted like she was about to say something, but nothing came out. "It's just like the show." I tried again, hoping to break the tension. That's when I realized her hands weren't just shaking, her whole body was. "Lucia," I said softly, "are you okay?" Her gaze darted toward the hallway as if someone might be standing there, watching us. "It's not funny," she whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw real terror in her eyes. Not the embarrassment of being noticed, not the discomfort of small talk, but something deeper, something that made my skin prickle. "Who would send that?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "Someone who knows me." The way she said it, flat, certain, sent a cold ripple through me. "Lucia, has this happened before?" She didn't answer. Her phone buzzed again. We both looked down. "Another message. You can play dress up, but I know who you are." She clutched the phone to her chest like it was a wound. "I have to go," she said suddenly, brushing past me. Her door slammed. The click of the lock followed. I stood there in the dim dorm hallway, the hum of the vending machine filling the silence, wondering how something that started as harmless entertainment had just tipped into something that felt like the start of a nightmare. And I couldn't shake one thought. Whoever A was, they weren't playing. It started small. So small, in fact, that I didn't realize what was happening until it had already spiraled into something I couldn't control. The first time I noticed something off, it was 3:07 a.m. I woke to the sound of running water and soft splashes. At first, I thought Lucia had fallen asleep in the shower, but when I peeked into the bathroom, I found her sitting in the tub filled with ice, her knees pulled to her chest, her lips pale and trembling. She didn't even look at me when I whispered her name, just muttered, "It helps me think," and stayed there, eyes unfocused. The next morning, there was no breakfast, no lunch. By evening, I realized she hadn't eaten all day. Only refilled the same chipped mug of black coffee over and over, her hands trembling as she lifted it to her lips. Her skin lost its warmth. Her eyes took on a restless, darting quality, like she was waiting for something to happen, or maybe waiting for someone to make a move. It didn't stop there. I began waking up to the faint whir of electronics. One night, I caught a soft, rhythmic blink from above my bed. I stood on a chair and saw it, a camera, neatly tucked inside the smoke detector, its lens unblinking and red. When I confronted her the next day, she smirked. "You can never be too careful," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Her desk began to change too. Gone were the stacks of textbooks and sticky notes. Instead, it became a grid of labeled evidence bags. Each one had a name written in neat block letters: Emily, Harper, Jasmine, Mia, girls from our dorm. Inside each bag was a small tuft of hair. I told myself they could be her own. Maybe she cut them herself. Maybe it was just another one of her moods. But I knew better when I saw one with my own name on it. I didn't ask her how she got it. She started locking her side of the room. When I'd leave for class and return, the air felt different, as if someone had been pacing, breathing heavy in my absence. One night, I woke to the sound of a soft scrape, a metallic drag across skin. I turned my head and froze. Lucia was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her hair hanging forward like a curtain. In her hand was a box cutter. She was dragging the blade across her thigh, slow and deliberate, carving the letter A into her flesh. Her face was calm, too calm. Blood welled and ran down her leg, pooling on the carpet. She didn't flinch when I whispered her name. She didn't even seem to hear me. And in that moment, I realized whatever game she thought she was playing, it wasn't pretend anymore. It wasn't just about the things she did anymore. It was about how she moved through the world. Every step, every look, carried the weight of someone who knew she couldn't be touched. Lucia didn't just bend rules. She rewrote them. She began timing her walks between classes to cross paths with certain people she'd mentioned in her suspect list. Sometimes she'd just smile at them, slow and unsettling, like she was trying to see how long they'd hold her gaze before looking away. Other times she'd drop something in front of them, a pen, a folded note, and watch closely to see if they picked it up. Her room became wrong, not messy, not chaotic. Wrong. Stacks of papers sorted by names I recognized from our dorm directory, printed screenshots of people's social media pages, annotated with red pen, a corkboard covered in string and push pins, except the yuck. Strings didn't connect photos to clues like in the movies. They connected faces to faces. She started keeping jars. At first, I thought they were candles. Then I saw what was inside. Buttons, rings, bits of fabric. A cigarette butt. Evidence, she said, as though that single word explained why she had a stranger's hoodie folded neatly in her desk drawer. She barely slept. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning to the sound of her whispering. Not to me, not to anyone I could see, but to the wall. When I asked, she smiled. The cameras pick up audio. It's important they hear the truth. One night, I came back from a late study session and found her sitting on the floor, every light off except a desk lamp. In her lap was a small spiral notebook, and in it, she was drawing a floor plan of our dorm. Not just the rooms, but the furniture placement right down to the position of people's beds. When she noticed me, she covered the page with her hand. "You'll see soon enough," she said. Her hold on me grew tighter, like a rope she kept pulling, one knot at a time. She'd drop casual references to that secret she knew about me me, like flicking a knife across my skin just to remind me it was there. I bet people would love to know that story, she'd murmur when we passed someone I knew. I'd feel my throat close, my chest ache. Every attempt I made to distance myself only seemed to amuse her. If I sat in a different part of the cafeteria, she'd appear across from me with her tray. If I left for class early, she'd be waiting outside the building. She made it look like friendship from the outside, but I knew it was surveillance. I stopped sleeping deeply. Every creak in the hallway sounded like her footsteps. Every ping of my phone made my stomach twist. What if she'd found something else? Sometimes I'd catch myself holding my breath in my own room, afraid even the sound of breathing might be something she'd record. The worst part wasn't the fear of what she might do. It was the growing suspicion that she was preparing for something bigger. She'd started saying things like, "You'll thank me when the truth comes out," or "When it happens, you'll be glad you're on my side." I didn't know what it was. I didn't want to know. But every day I felt myself getting pulled deeper into her game, and I wasn't sure I'd know how to get out, even if I tried. He pushed himself onto one elbow, his eyes wide with confusion and pain. "What?" he began, but the word broke apart in his throat, strangled halfway out. Before he could recover, Lucia was on him. One second she was a shadow, the next she was straddling his chest, her knees digging hard into his ribs. Her hoodie sagged forward, concealing most of her face, but I could see the pale curve of a grin beneath the fabric. In her right hand, the syringe caught the flicker of the overhead light, the needle gleaming like a fragment of broken glass. I froze, not from fear exactly, but from the shock of seeing her actually cross that line. For months she had spun, her theories, scribbled names onto her endless A-list, and planned elaborate traps that never quite left the safety of her laptop. I had always thought it was just performance, an eccentric obsession with no real consequence. But now there was no buffer, no game. This was real. The needle pierced his skin with a sharp, wet pop, a sound so small it almost disappeared beneath. The hum of the garage lights. His breath caught violently, his body jolting upward, his shoulders slamming into her knees. Then came the spasms. His legs kicked out, heels hammering the concrete in a frantic rhythm, sneakers squealing against the floor. Lucia's weight held steady, unshaken by his desperate thrashing, her eyes locked on the syringe, watching intently as the plunger descended, as though the moment was too precise, too sacred to look away from. Foam began to gather at the corners of his mouth, thick, white, and bubbling with each ragged breath. A sound emerged from him, but it was unlike anything human. It wasn't a scream or a groan. It was something raw, primal, an animal choking on its own panic. It wormed its way inside my skull, a sound I knew I would never be able to unhear. Then the air changed. It wasn't just the stale scent of oil and damp concrete anymore. Something bitter rose between us, acrid and chemical, the ghost of whatever was in that syringe. It coated the back of my throat, clung to my tongue like invisible smoke. I swallowed, hard, but the taste remained. Every breath felt like pulling poison into my lungs. That was when my body decided for me. The sound of his gasps, the stinging bitterness in the air, the sight of her still pressing the needle deep into his arm, as if she could force the last drop into his bloodstream. It was too much. I turned and ran. My shoes slapped against the concrete, the sound exploding into echoes that chased me down the narrow lanes. Her voice followed me, at first low, almost conversational, then sharper, like a command meant for a dog. I didn't want to hear the words. Behind me, his gasps turned wetter, more desperate, as if he were drowning without water. I couldn't think about what that meant. I just needed distance. The light at the mouth of the garage grew closer, brighter, and I focused on it as though it were my only lifeline. By the time I burst into the open night, my lungs burned with the effort. The air outside was cool, but it didn't wash away the chemical taste in my mouth. The campus lay silent before me, the lamplight stretching in long, thin lines across the dew-slick grass. Every building was dark, every window blank, yet I felt as if 1,000 eyes were watching me from the shadows. I didn't know where to go. Every possible path seemed dangerous now, because I carried something with me, knowledge that was too heavy to bear. And somewhere back in that garage, Lucia knew I had it.